Hey guys, we're Matt and Sarah from Amateur Filmies, and welcome to another video.
In this video, we'll be showing you our Criterion Blu-Ray collection. I always go to say Criterion Collection. That doesn't quite work, but yes, we're really excited to talk about what we have here, and yeah, we hope you enjoy. So I'm sure all of you who are watching this know who Criterion are, but basically they're a film distribution and restoration company who they specialize in like classic and contemporary films that they've deemed to be important in some way. In my opinion, they're probably one of the best labels out there just because the quality of their releases is extremely high. Not only do they have such a wide range of films to choose from, but just the quality of the restorations and the supplements that come with the films is just so top notch that I can't help but collect as many as I can.
They're definitely one of the more bougie labels that we collect,
Yeah.
a bit more expensive, so when we do buy them we have to budget correctly. We wait for those sales, the Barnes & Noble sales, but I think we have a pretty respectable collection.
Yeah, I think we're doing alright, all things considered. So we have between 40 and 50 releases that we're going to be showing here today, and while I would say that I've watched a lot more of these than Sarah has,
Yes.
there are still a couple that I am yet to get to, so we'll go through the ones that neither of us have seen first, and we'll quickly rattle them off, and then we'll sort of get more into the ones that we obviously have seen and have some actual stuff to talk about. So looking at the pile, we've got about 6 that we haven't seen, so I'll quickly rattle them off now. The first two are actually by Andrei Tarkovsky, the first of which is Stalker, and the next is Solaris.
So we have Akira Kurosawa's Dreams, and we have Kwaidan. I believe that's how you pronounce it. So that came out in 1965, and it's a horror anthology, and it borrows tales from Japanese folklore and Japanese ghost stories.
Next up is Federico Fellini's 8.5. I hear a lot of filmmakers talk about Fellini and this film in particular and how it's always like, it's really inspirational for them and stuff. And just in general, I want to see more Fellini films because I know he was supposed to be a really influential and important filmmaker. He's just one of those guys that I just haven't really seen any of his stuff. And that was the reason I got this film in first, because I knew that this was supposed to be one of his best. So hopefully I'll like it and I'll check out some of his other ones.
So we have Tokyo Story by Yasujiro Ozu. He's supposed to be a pretty influential director like Fellini, and it explores sort of like family strains and family relations, and it'll be interesting to watch how, a simple plot can be turned into something really complex.
So those are the 6 that we haven't watched yet. I'm sure we'll find the time soon. You know how it is with having such a really long, big watch pile. It's just a matter of getting to them eventually, and we will, because they are supposed to be really good films, which is why we bought them in the first place. So this is the first of the ones that we've both... Oh no, sorry, I've only watched this one. This is Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. That is a really hard title to remember. This is actually... I only watched this one for the first time, like, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, which I'm a little bit ashamed to say, although you still need to watch it yourself as well. Just a really great blend of both drama and comedy, with really great performances. Very rewatchable, and yeah, I really want you to watch this one soon, because it's brilliant.
I will.
Yeah. Here we have Terry Gilliam's Brazil, which honestly might actually be my favourite Terry Gilliam movie. I've only watched it the once though, but it really, really amazed me. The set pieces in this are absolutely gorgeous, and just the imagination behind it. I really love Terry Gilliam because he just builds these really complex, interesting worlds, and Brazil is definitely no exception to that.
So we have Funny Games, and this is the original. I've never seen a movie so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so incredibly played out, and I love how it plays with your expectations of how a narrative is supposed to go. Like, there are a few scenes where the characters sort of break the fourth wall, and obviously that's been done in cinema before, and it just mixes the sort of black comedy with the horror so brilliantly.
The characters literally talk straight to the audience and even criticize you for like how they sort of ask you like, oh, did you really think it was going to go this way, blah blah blah, stuff like that. And just like, bro, I'm just trying to watch a movie, stop trying to pick a fight with me.
Yeah, don't challenge me.
Yeah. Okay, so this is another one that I've just watched recently. This is Paris, Texas. You know, I actually did quite like this movie. It was a little bit different than what I was expecting, but it's definitely a very character-driven story. And Harry Dean Stanton, he plays just he has such a unique performance in this. He's just very mysterious. You really empathize with him, even though his situation's very strange. I don't want to go into the details of the plot, but like, I wasn't really sure how I felt about it when I first finished it, but I think that I'll have a greater appreciation for it upon more rewatches. Sarah got this one for me for Christmas. It's a newer acquisition. This is Police Story 1 and Police Story 2. Now, I'd been wanting this for a long time, and I immediately watched both of them. and I absolutely love them. I love Jackie Chan. He's such a great actor, and I grew up watching his American films, but I've been wanting to sort of get more to, the films that he did in like the 70s and the 80s. The stunts in this are just absolutely incredible, and they're just really fun to watch. Just honestly great action comedies. I really think that you would enjoy these for what they are.
I think you'll find that the best Jackie Chan movie is The Spy Next Door.
Oh, Sarah, it's clearly The Tuxedo.
Oh, of course. Mr. Nice Guy.
Ugh, trash.
Then we have the classic Silence of the Lambs by Jonathan Demme. Probably the best crime drama, thriller, sort of horror that I've ever seen.
It's really good. Anthony Hopkins is he's scary.
They didn't think that hiring a classically trained actor could work so perfectly because Hopkins had been in like Shakespeare plays and he was so like put together, but he played that part so perfectly.
Now, I'd be lying if I didn't say that Sarah wore this shirt specifically for when we showed this movie, and that is House. I'm sure a lot of you who collect Criterion know about this film already, but if you're watching this and you haven't seen or heard of this movie, watch it because it is the most surreal horror comedy I've ever seen in my life. One of the most wildest movies I've ever watched, honestly. You need to watch this.
Like the scene, I've seen the scene with the piano. I think the piano eats someone.
Yeah, something like that. This is one that I could rewatch all the time. It's just that wild. Watch it with friends especially. Probably the best blind buy I've ever had from Criterion, to be honest. This is Edward Yang's Yi Yi. And this is definitely one of my favorite films that I have in, like, as far as our Criterion Collection goes. Such a beautiful film. It's very character driven, but really you just sort of watch how each of these individuals and their family go through the motions and deal with certain things that come up. And it's just a beautiful movie. I really, really highly recommend it, and I really want to check out Edward Yang's other works as well, in particular A Brighter Summer's Day.
While we're on the theme of domestic dramas, we have Wong Kar-wai's In the Mood for Love. And this film explores the emotions of the characters and how they're feeling and like the longing that they have for each other and they have for like happiness in their own lives, as opposed to, what's unfolding around them. Color is like a huge motif used in this, and every shot is just like beautiful and it really sends it
framed really well. Hey?
Yeah, like it sends like a really good message.
Yeah, and I meant to bring this up when I was talking about Yi Yi as well, because these are two good films to compare in that sense where, as far as the filmmaking style goes, like In the Mood for Love is very, very stylistic. Like the way it's shot, it's very deliberately crafted and has a certain aesthetic to it that he's really trying to go for, whereas Yi Yi is actually, you feel sort of more like a spectator, like a lot of camera angles are from really far away, and there's not as much emphasis put on like making the film look really sort of visually interesting, if that makes sense. It's sort of hard to explain unless you've seen the movie, but if you have seen them, you probably know what I'm talking about. I apologise for our shiny faces as well. It's the middle of summer here in Australia and our aircon is not working right now, so I'm like sweating like a pig. I apologise.
What, melting?
Here we have the French film The 400 Blows, which is another classic. Now, obviously I hadn't watched this film prior to getting it on Criterion, so this was another blind buy as well, but I absolutely love this film. Again, quite simple as far as the plot goes, but the whole film you're sort of experiencing what's going on through the eyes of this child actor, and he's just really, the film's just really, really convincing and feeling really natural, and you just feel so sorry for this kid because he has to deal with sort of parents who aren't so necessarily as involved as they should be in his life. I don't know, it's a very human story. And for that reason, I really, really liked it. And it's just shot beautifully as well, like most of these are. And I do highly recommend it for that aspect. This one's actually a newer film. This is The Game, starring Michael Douglas and Sean Penn. It came out in 1997. This is also a very emotionally draining film. Have you seen this one?
Yeah. I haven't seen the last 40 minutes of it, but...
Well, then you haven't seen it.
Well, I've seen it.
Yeah, this film is just... You always think it's about to finish, and then it just pulls you right back in because there's another twist of events. Very entertaining movie.
Very frustrating.
Very frustrating, but in like a good way. The same way that Uncut Gems is frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Really, really great one, and it's a good one to have in the Criterion Collection because it is quite engaging.
So we have Don't Look Now by Nicholas Roeg, which is a horror film that gets recommended left, right, and centre. I was actually shocked to find out it's not a very conventionally scary horror film, but it is very unsettling. It actually reminds me of sort of the Italian giallos from the 1970s.
Yeah,
not just for the setting, but like obviously like the slasher elements. There's two ladies who are psychics in it.
Now that you're saying it, I can totally see the giallo aspects, like influences on it. I can really see its influence on like later films like Hereditary, for example. I can see in this film, it feels like the family, the grief and the tragedy and like just the drama. That's the first primary point, and then the horror is just sort of like, it's just like another tool.
It's like a vehicle.
It's more like a tool rather than like the driving force of the film. Like, I don't think, I mean, there are parts of this that are really creepy and scary.
Like the ending?
Yeah, the ending's pretty creepy, but like, it's just, and I don't know, it's much more layered than just your conventional horror film. I really do highly recommend it in that aspect. Now, this one's another really, really well-known classic. If you ever find yourself on the top 250 of IMDb, this is how I first found out about the film. That is 12 Angry Men. And it's famous for a reason. This film is absolutely brilliant. It's directed by Sidney Lumet, who I actually come to love, through his work on Network as well, and he's done a few other things as well that I really like. This is just a staple, I think. I think if you like film in any way, you should really watch this one. It takes place in the one room. It's very...
It doesn't feel like bottled up.
Yeah, it is quite claustrophobic, but intentionally so. Like, and it's really... There's a lot of like philosophical stuff being asked of the audience in this, and like it's just a really good film to ponder on.
So we have The Virgin Suicides by Sofia Coppola. And this film has a huge comment on the male gaze, and it is rife without the film because the way that it's shot is quite light and airy, and you're seeing everything that these sisters in the movie do through the eyes of these teenage boys who sort of like idolize them and like picture them as these perfect sort of like goddesses.
Yeah.
When in reality, their family is dysfunctional. A lot of them are severely depressed. It's quite a dark movie. And it takes a pretty dark turn. And it's a really sort of deep comment on how we like to sort of like fetishize and we like to idolize people even though we don't know what's going on behind closed doors.
So this is the first of 2 Cronenberg films. And this is Scanners, one of his more well-known ones. And that face on the cover art is exactly how I feel in this heat right now. I feel like that is a perfect representation of my face right now. But yeah, Scanners. You know what? To be fair, this actually isn't my favorite of Cronenberg's. This one gets like this one gets a lot of love, to be honest. And I do like the film, but I do find myself gravitating towards some of his other works. I do like this for a variety of reasons. The gore, especially, is great. It's got that infamous head exploding scene. But I have only seen this the once, and it was quite a while ago. But this release is spectacular, and I look forward to rewatching it. The next Cronenberg film we have is Naked Lunch, which is a very, very unique film. This is probably my 3rd favorite Cronenberg behind The Fly and Videodrome. And in our previous video where I talked about my top 10 horror films of all time, I did talk about Videodrome on that list. And when I was talking about Cronenberg, I talked about how he uses a lot of like visceral imagery to help tell the story, and that is 100% the case with Naked Lunch. In this film, you will see some of the most weirdest special effects and prosthetics and just ideas put to screen. And it is actually a very confusing movie in a lot of ways. It's definitely not a conventional format as far as how to like tell a story from beginning to end. And I actually found myself in the midst of it being quite confused, and like I wasn't even sure I knew what was going on. But by the end of it, after sort of considering what I had seen on screen and watching it all unfold, I felt like I had a grasp of what he was intending. I'm really glad that I watched it, and it is one that I think I will get more from the more I watch it.
So we have Rosemary's Baby by Roman Polanski. And this is probably my favorite occult film. I love the idea that you have this sort of vulnerable person, this person that has no idea what's going on, and no one believes her, and she's sort of being swept into this big conspiracy. When you're first watching it, you're not quite sure whether to believe her or not, or whether she's making things up. It's really frustrating in those movies where the character is trying to convince people, but the people aren't listening. And it has the entire film has this sinister tone to it, and it pervades it till the very last scene, and I love it.
So got a couple here from the master David Lynch, the first of which is Blue Velvet. Blue Velvet, on the surface, it's sort of like a more traditional sort of amateur detective story, murder mystery sort of thing, but you watch David Lynch for how his films are tonally, and especially how they are visually as well. He plays around with a lot of like dreamlike imagery, and that is 100% the case with this and the other ones that I'm going to be showing. I think Blue Velvet, maybe, at least from the ones that I've seen, is probably one of the more accessible films of his filmography. And you get to see some really great performances in this, especially by Dennis Hopper, who, if you've seen it, I'll never get the image of him huffing out of that laughing gas mask or whatever it was. That was creepy. But yeah, Blue Velvet. The next Lynch film is Mulholland Drive, which is a beautiful release as well. And this is probably the one, would you reckon this is the one he's most known for? Mulholland Drive?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, probably this and Twin Peaks and some other stuff. Naomi Watts plays her role beautifully in this. This one, again, he plays around with the dreamlike imagery. And when I talk about Lynch, I'm going to say dreamlike a lot. And that is like, if you had to define his filmography, I feel like dreamlike is probably the word you'd go to. A lot to unpack in this, but also that's in a good way. And then we have the classic Eraserhead. I love this movie. I actually owned this on DVD like over 10 years ago, and then I just never got around to watching it. I didn't even know much about it. I just saw it. It was cheap and I grabbed it. But then I saw this on Criterion. I did more research, and then I took the dive, and I don't regret it because this film is like beyond whack. It's very, very strange, and definitely not the most accessible film out there. There's some really disgusting, haunting stuff to be found in this film, but it is a cult classic for a reason, I'll say that much.
We have the 1960s film Eyes Without a Face, and this is a French black and white film, and it was on a list of top 10 horror movies that were too controversial for their time. It's not necessarily gory, but it's more what's implied, and the movie didn't really have like the sort of classic like jump scares that we have nowadays in like modern horror.
Yeah.
It had more of like a sort of sinister scariness to it. We have Night of the Living Dead by George A. Romero. This is my personal favourite of the entire collection. Not because it looks so good, but because of the movie. It's just completely brilliant. And this isn't the first zombie movie ever made, but this definitely kick-started the zombie craze. Characters are sort of trapped in a house and that they're being surrounded by this evil, and it just feels so claustrophobic, and it really captures the terror of zombies.
Knowing its influence on pop culture, I feel makes it a little bit more special as well.
Absolutely, yeah. We have Lady Snowblood, which is a 1970s revenge tale. It's most notably known for influencing Kill Bill, and it features some really iconic scenes out in the snow.
The choreography in this in particular is really good, and it's actually extremely gory. When we're showing our collection, I like to keep the directors together, and this is probably going to be the biggest block of directors. This is going to be all the Kurosawa stuff that we have. I will say I've seen most of these. Sarah, on the other hand, hasn't.
Sorry.
First Kurosawa film is Rashomon, which came out in 1950. This is a great film, and it's also quite accessible as well, and that's something I should say about Kurosawa, is his films, despite him being a Japanese filmmaker, his films are quite
Universal.
They are Western influenced as well, and I think that's part of what makes them so accessible worldwide. And this film is really great, and similar to when I was talking about with 12 Angry Men, in that it poses a lot of philosophical questions about truth and how information is spread and how we act upon information that is presented to us without knowing all the facts. But a very great film, and one of the shorter ones, so if you're looking to get into his filmography, this is a good one to start with. Next up is The Hidden Fortress, which came out in 1958. Whenever people talk about this one, they'll normally bring up the apparent Star Wars influence. I can sort of get what they're talking about, but it's not as strong as you might read about online. I think the biggest strength about this film are the characters. There's two characters in this that are actually quite funny. But I will say, even though this was quite enjoyable, it's probably at the bottom of the Kurosawa films that I've watched. I've only seen what's here. I haven't seen his whole filmography, but this one is still quite engaging. I just think it could have been a little bit better. So we have a double pack here. This is Yojimbo and Sanjuro. Really, really great addition to have, because these films are really great examples of what Akira Kurosawa is known for, which is great storytelling, great cinematography, and just great writing and action. All of it is in one here, and comedy as well. Akira Kurosawa, he's known for a lot of things, but I think he should be appreciated a lot for the comedy that he can have in his films as well, because I feel like it does hit at all the great moments. Yojimbo, in my opinion, is quite a lot more superior to Sanjuro. I think Yojimbo is just a much more engaging story in comparison. Fantastic films, and similar to what I said about Rashomon, these are a lot easier to digest than some of his other ones, and they're all engaging, they're all great, but I think sometimes people get a bit intimidated by the really long run times of some other films.
I know I do.
Yeah, and like Yojimbo, they're just sort of standard movie length, and as I said, you've got all those positive aspects about it. So at the very least, watch Yojimbo, and then if you like that, check out Sanjuro.
So this is the one Kurosawa film I did watch with Matt, and that is Akira. So a Japanese businessman gets diagnosed with stomach cancer, and he's sort of reflecting upon his life, and he's realizing that he wants to give it more meaning before he eventually passes. So he sets ahead and he wants to help people, and he also sort of goes on these little sort of like journeys. I'd suggest like
so it's like different encounters with different characters and stuff, and
exactly, like with a younger girl and like sort of like a drinking buddy.
Encourages a lot of like self-reflection after watching it as well. Makes you want to sort of think about your own life a little bit as well, and it's a really, really great film. And I think independent of his samurai films, which a lot of people know Kurosawa for, I think some people who might not know that he also does great films outside of that subgenre.
Great dramas,
Great dramas as well. I think this is the first Kurosawa film that I'd ever seen, and this is Throne of Blood. And while this isn't necessarily my favourite Kurosawa film, it did hook me well enough that I wanted to check out his other films. And I think the thing that grabbed me the most about this one was how it was visually. Like, there's a lot of really memorable shots, in particular when he's defending himself in the castle and you see all the arrows come after him. That was a cool scene. That was really great, yeah. It's actually Kurosawa's take on the Shakespeare's Macbeth story. And I kind of wish that I knew about this film back in high school when I was forced to talk about Macbeth in English. This next film is High and Low by Kurosawa. And this is another film that is not a samurai film, but is great in its own right. Basically, this is a story about a kidnapping where this rich businessman, his driver's son gets kidnapped, and the rich businessman gets the ransom that he has to pay. And it's just a lot of great tension in this film with a lot of memorable sequences. The next Kurosawa film is Kagemusha. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And even though I have seen Ran, which is also in colour, this is the only film that I have in the Criterion Collection of his that is in colour. And I really wish, and watching this film really makes me wish that all these other films were in colour as well. I know that the black and white aspect adds to the charm of those older films, but watching such a great filmmaker who puts so much emphasis on the storyboarding aspects of his films in the planning process, you see the color in this one, how you utilize it. It's just absolutely stunning. Like, there's a dream, I think it's the dream sequence in this.
Oh,
do you remember that one? Like, yeah, he's like in the clouds. Yeah. It's absolutely riveting. I don't see a lot of people say that this is their favorite. Like, I think this is probably up there for me. It's a little bit less traditional as far as the storytelling aspects of it are. It feels like more like a historical recount of what's going on. The film still plays out beautifully, and it's just a visual masterpiece and a great experience. Thinking now, we kind of lied a little bit. I feel we should have shown this one at the start because neither of us have actually seen this one. I'm kind of ashamed to, if I'm being honest. This is Seven Samurai. I have been wanting to watch this one for so long, and I've actually had it for a long time, so I honestly have no excuse, but this is one of those films where I have a couple of friends who they haven't seen it either, and we all wanted to watch it together, and then it just doesn't line up, so I keep putting it on the back burner, and I think I should just bite the bullet and just watch it by myself. Obviously, I don't need to say much more about the actual content of this film, not because I haven't watched it, but because it is such a known masterpiece. After watching all his other works, I cannot wait to sort of see what is considered to be his magnum opus. So I really can't wait to watch this one.
That was all for the Kurosawas. On a different note, we have Rob Reiner's The Princess Bride. I hadn't actually seen this film. A lot of people had seen it in their childhood. I'd only seen it like last year. I loved it, and I could tell it was a movie that I would have loved as a child.
Same.
But it had its own charm, obviously, watching it now. Yeah. It's just like a beautiful little story and fantastic acting. So we have Richard Linklater's Dazed and Confused. This is a film where not a lot of things actually happen, but it's more about the way it's shot. It's more about what's happening in the frame and the characters like sort of interacting that makes it magical. This features a lot of performances from like famous actors when they're a bit younger. Matthew McConaughey plays the seediest man you'll ever meet. He says something about high school girls or something. It features an iconic soundtrack.
Yeah.
And it's just like the ultimate sort of like hangout movie.
I guess you could have included Yojimbo and Shinjiro as a box set, but from here on out, these are all going to be the box sets that we have from Criterion. The first of which is the Three Colors trilogy. Now, I'm going to butcher his name again. Krzysztof Kieslowski. As I said, it's a Three Colors trilogy, and the films are known just as Red, White, and Blue. And they all sort of deal with different themes, but there is a lot of writing about how these films are tied together through like various cultural and historical means. I will admit, I obviously, not knowing the history behind these films and, maybe not being as knowledgeable about the country's history itself, Yeah, that aspect sort of went over my head a little bit. But that being said, obviously these films do stand on their own.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot to gather from them. I just wanted to mention that because I know that does get brought up a lot when these films are talked about. Of these three films, I think I would say that Red is probably my favorite, although they're all honestly fantastic. Blue is definitely very melancholy and
Yes.
a very dark exploration of like grief and how one deals with death. I could talk about these films a little bit more, but you get the picture. They're all beautifully shot, and I actually can't wait to watch more of Kieslowski's films because I need to watch Decalogue, but also Arrow just announced a box set of his other works as well.
We have Richard Linklater's The Before Trilogy, starring Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. The entire movie is just dialogue heavy. All they do is discuss things pretty much.
Yeah.
But it's just beautifully done. Like, you're engaged from start to finish because...
Yeah, I think that's what I love about these films as well. I've watched all three, and I think this is one of those films where it really showed me that you don't need a whole heap of stuff going on to have a really engaging movie, because these movies are literally just two people talking for like 99% of it. But it is still really engaging, but like just thematically, in what, like, watching all three of the films, you get to see how this relationship develops and how just really relatable human struggles happen, and watching these two navigate those problems. It's very, as I said, it's very relatable, and I think that is probably the film's biggest strength.
Now, this is my ultimate edition from Criterion, my personal favourite, on top of Night of the Living Dead, of course. It's the Guillermo del Toro trilogy, and this features Kronos, Pan's Labyrinth, and The Devil's Backbone. 3 brilliant movies. Obviously, like, subtly horror, but obviously they have their own themes. And the one thing that is common across all 3 of them is the amazing monster work. It's the amazing, like, practical effects.
Yeah, definitely.
In that world that Del Toro creates that he's famous for. Del Toro has a main character that's a child, and in that way he can focus on the exploration of childhood and, like, innocence, loss of innocence, and, like, you know, childhood imagination and stuff. And it's really important to remember that these monsters that are created in all 3 films are from Del Toro's mind, and these are the monsters he's created since he was a child, the ones that he's thought up, and I don't know, I think that's really special.
What's your favourite of the trilogy?
Oh, that's really hard. I'd probably have to say Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, same.
That
Definitely same.
scene where she has to retrieve, like, a key, and there's, like, a dining table, and there's a creature with eyes in its hand. Oh my god.
So this next set is actually a really great series, and that is the Lone Wolf and Cub series. And this one's actually based off a manga, if I'm not mistaken. But these are excellent movies. This is sort of similar in, like, sort of tonality and just the way the film is made, like, similar to Lady Snowblood. And it focuses a lot more on the bloodshed aspects. You know, in Kurosawa's samurai films, even though there is, like, a lot of action and, you know, some people get cut up with the swords, there's not, like, that much blood, really. This sort of takes it to the next level. And, yeah, it's really, really great series. I've seen the first 3, but there are 6 titles in here, and I'll quickly read them out, and they all come with the title Lone Wolf and Cub before it. So there's Lone Wolf and Cub Sword of Vengeance, Baby Cart at the River Styx, Baby Cart to Hades, Baby Cart in Peril, Baby Cart in the Land of Demons, and White Heaven in Hell. So the premise for these films is actually quite simple. Basically, the main character, he used to be the Shogun's executioner before some stuff went down, and basically he ends up wandering the countryside where a lot of people are hunting for him, but he still has to take care of his young son. And the plot of these films, at least from the ones I've seen, they're not very complex at all, and they're basically just excuses for you to meet some really interesting characters that he can eventually beat up. So so the last 3 ones that we're going to be showing, they are really, really gigantic box sets, and I'm sure if you collect Criterion, you can probably guess what some of these are going to be. Now, the reason I wanted to mention that first was because given the nature of how big these box sets are, and, you know, sort of how recently we acquired them, there are still a lot of movies in these box sets that we are yet to watch. But we did our research before we purchased them, and we knew what we were getting into beforehand. So, with all that said, the first of the 3 box sets we're going to be showing is the Zatoichi, the Blind Swordsman box set. Now, this box set is absolutely stunning, and I actually have a great story about this one quickly before we talk about the film. This is one of the best Blu-ray deals I've ever gotten in my entire life. I remember when I saw this on eBay, I told Sarah immediately, and we just couldn't believe it. And basically, on eBay, you get these sort of sellers where they'll sell a lot of, like, random items. Like, you know, they're big, I call them big box sellers. So basically, they'll sell movies, they'll sell games, they'll sell car parts, just random stuff. And when it comes to sellers like that, you can tell that sometimes they don't know what they have, and they'll just list it for an extremely cheap price. Anyway, long story short, I saw this come up on eBay secondhand from this seller, and I got it for $48 Australian, shipped to me from the US. Which,
What
if you,
is it RRP at?
its retail price is a lot more than that, even in the 50% off sale. I think, I could be wrong, but from memory, this box set goes from anywhere from $150 to $200 Australian when it's on special. I got it for like a quarter of that price, and I couldn't believe. And the caveat was that it was listed as just in good condition, not like new or anything. So it was a bit of a gamble in that regard. But it actually ended up coming in great condition with hardly any scuffs or anything like that. So I got a huge steal. And as far as the films go, I can tell that this is a series that I'm going to enjoy going through because it really is, as I said, a lot more lighthearted, a lot more, I don't know, just fun, I guess. They're not too heavy. And yeah, I as I said, I'm looking forward to watching more of these. I'm sure, actually, I reckon you'd like these, Sarah, to be honest.
You think so?
At least the first one, yeah. I thought it was great.
So we were going to show this earlier, but we figured we would contrast it with the upgrade we recently made.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Godzilla. We obviously had to get this classic on Criterion.
Yeah.
And we swapped it in for...
Yeah, so we plan on selling that edition at some point because we are now the proud owners of the Godzilla Showa era collection. Now, we are both very happy to say as well that we actually got this set the exact same way that we got the Zatoichi set. I won't explain the whole story again because I literally just said it, but we got this off eBay for exactly the same price actually and from the same seller.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was beyond ridiculous. $48 shipped. And
how much does this usually value at?
I think on Amazon Australia at the moment, you can buy it for just under $200. You can imagine...
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, you can imagine how excited we were when this arrived in actually pretty much perfect condition. So this box set actually contains the Showa era of films from the Godzilla series, which is basically the period between 1954 and 1975. So there's 15 films. I'm not going to read them all. I'll just name some of the notable ones. So there's the original classic Godzilla. And there's also King Kong vs. Godzilla, Mothra vs. Godzilla. There's even Destroy All Monsters and Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, which is supposed to be really cool too.
I wonder whether sales would have increased if they included the Matthew Broderick Godzilla.
Oh, that one... That's
my personal favourite.
Oh, Sarah. That's blasphemy. To be fair, though, I did grow up in loving that movie.
Yeah, that was a great movie.
Yeah.
I always thought it was Jurassic Park when I was a kid.
So finally, the last one that we have to show here. This is the biggest edition that we have, especially... maybe not... I think Godzilla's taller than this, but just in sheer weight...
Yes.
And everything else included, this is definitely the most extensive collection we have.
It's hefty.
This is the Ingmar Bergman Cinema Collection. As is already quite clear from this video and obviously some of our other ones, we like to blind buy some films, right? But this is one of those editions where I know Ingmar Bergman's reputation, I know how iconic he is as a filmmaker, but I don't know his films. But I knew that during the Criterion sale that I was willing to put down the money to invest in this set because I know that this set is very representative of his body of work. I feel like I like film that much that I'm willing to take the risk. The box set itself is just absolutely gorgeous, and I know that for a blind buy, this is a very expensive purchase. Yes. But I rationalized it in that, you know, got it during the 50% off sale, and then it was like Prime Day on Amazon on top of that, so it was an extra something a percent off. I got it for a really, really great price, and there's like 39 films in this thing. So it worked out to only be like a few bucks per movie, if you sort of think about it like that. And, you know, I was just happy to get it at the time, and it really is a gorgeous set, and it comes with just this gigantic book with essays on the film, and it even comes with like recommendations on like what viewing order you should proceed with if you're first getting into his works, which I think is really awesome of Criterion to do that as well. It's just like the amount of thought that went into this release like is just absolutely incredible on Criterion's behalf. I cannot wait to see what other box sets they do this year. I'm pretty sure they confirmed just recently that they'll be doing a Wong Kar-wai box set as well, which will include In the Mood for Love, so we'll be grabbing that box set when it comes out. But I do need to actually just sit down and start on this because...
Yeah, we need to catch up.
Yes, we do. And with that Ingmar Bergman set, we are now at the end of the video, so thank you very much for watching. I imagine this will probably be a longer video because Sarah and I were both excited to film this one in particular because we really wanted to talk about some of these films. And I feel like we don't really get the chance, or at least thus far on our channel, we haven't really talked about Criterion that much.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm happy that we've done this video, and as I said, I can't wait to actually dig into those few that we haven't seen yet.
Despite not having seen too many of these films, I'm really keen to check them out because the way Matt describes them, most of them are like complete classics, and some of them are like, you know, a little bit alternative, but you know, I'll give them a go. I'm personally more of a Scream Factory girl myself. But I love a good Criterion, and yeah, can't wait to check them out. Thanks again for watching.
Thank you.